Greetings, friends. I hope you are doing well during this quite powerful time, this Capricorn full moon that is now aligning for us. Just make sure this chart is on your screen. And so it is. So at 11:37:38, let's call it 11:37:37. a.m. on Pacific time, we will have, at least from a geocentric or Earth-centered point of view, an alignment of the moon opposite the sun from the center of Earth. And it's quite a powerful one for many reasons that are easily seen in the chart for those of you who have learned to read this language, and for other reasons that are a little bit more difficult to see. I love the image of the mystic rectangle that this particular Capricorn full moon forms with the lunar nodes. Let me get a little circle device and just paint that rectangle that you see here on the chart. We might want to include Neptune in this geometry. And should we, then we have what some call the castle with the mystic rectangle with this point. So let me stay with the mystic rectangle for a moment. It connects four signs that are said to be blind from the windows of a particular astrological axis. In this case, the axis of Gemini and Sagittarius, where we find Venus in Gemini at this time, and actually in pretty similar degrees. And I want to speak, if I can, in this short journey also about this strength of this Venus-Neptune square and Venus-Saturn trine at the moment of this full moon alignment. But the mystic rectangle in these signs of Taurus, Cancer, Scorpio, and Capricorn, right? And particularly formed by the full moon itself, Capricorn moon, opposite Cancer sun, and in alignment with their nodes, right? Because the lunar nodes are the places where, from Earth's point of view, the paths of moon and sun intersect. So it's a really amazing alignment. And the mystic rectangle, I think, is very aptly named. It's a very kind of dreamy, spiritual combination of signs and activated when hosting planets and points that align in specific degrees of those signs. And I think a very important thing that's opens windows into this particular mystic rectangle is, what are the things that Gemini and Sagittarius are blind to? So why would I say Gemini, Sagittarius? Well, in the tradition, signs cannot see their neighbors. So Gemini cannot see Taurus or Cancer, and cannot see the neighbors of the opposition. So Gemini cannot see the two signs that are quincunx or 5/12, the neighbors of the opposing sign Sagittarius, which are Scorpio and Capricorn. We could do the same thing from Sagittarius. We can't see our neighbors, Scorpio and Capricorn, or we cannot see the neighbors of the opposition, which is Gemini, so Taurus and Cancer. And this is very much one of the powerful truths that support the idea that the 12 signs are actually composed of 6 poles, and that the Gemini-Sagittarius pole speaks of 2 signs that are actually the 2 sides of one thing. Well, this one thing might be truth. Gemini and Sagittarius, Sagittarius like the truth, right? Capital T-H-E, capital everything. There's only one truth. And that can bring us to the one. But it could also completely separate us, because if we believe we know the truth, it can lead to all sorts of, fundamentalisms and, why do I forget the word? Crusades and such. This idea that we need to convert others to the truth, which of course lends itself actually more towards what is typically dreamed into for the opposite sign of Gemini, like division, polarity, duality. Well, Gemini is the truth that there are many truths. We each have our own truth. There are always 2 sides of the story in this, right? And I think that it's important for us to bring our attention there and to bring some love. And so Venus and Gemini, the very powerful place of the zodiac, is interesting to me here, kind of bringing some love to this idea that there can be many truths when the mystical rectangle itself is in a place that's very culture oriented, rule based. This is the Cancer Capricorn opposition, and very like kind of passionate, maybe sometimes too much so, and like in the needs of and the loyalty for a particular kind of tribal orientation. That's like the addition of the Taurus Scorpio space that currently hosts the lunar nodes and Uranus as well. So there's a powerful truth about this particular moon too, in that she has connections to all of the invisible planets, at least those that are on the screen: Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. I could add Eris to the mix, actually, who's in late Aries, and we would see Moon square Eris and some of these other so-called dwarf planets too. But to stick with this image, it's interesting to see that at the time of this full moon, the moon's most previous aspect was a trine to Taurus Uranus. And after the time of the full moon, the moon will apply to sextile Neptune, and then finally conjoin Pluto before leaving the sign. So I find that these invisible planets tend to come into visibility here in this quote unquote material world through connections with visible planets, those most visible, of course, Moon and Sun, and maybe Moon the most, because while Sun is certainly the brightest light, so bright that we cannot see other stars when the sun is above the horizon. This is one of the mysteries of day, right? The opposite is true with the moon, especially at this time when opposite sun from Earth's center full, the full mirror of the moon reflecting sunlight to our eyes, particularly bright, illuminating the night, this opportunity to walk out in the silver rays, you know. But we can see where Moon is in the heavens. I mean, she does eat much of the sky. The sun eats it all. But we can see at this time Moon in these late degrees of Capricorn where that happens to align in the stars, for example, which is in kind of the cape, as it's often shown, of the archer. And we can never see Neptune or Pluto with the naked eye. Uranus sometimes, certainly not at this time. But, you know, Moon can bring those transcendental energies into form. And that word is a very powerful Capricorn word, you know? Like the foundation, the things that we're standing upon. Well, what are we standing upon? And what is this in reflection of Cancer, which in so many rules can be the mannerisms and did I say in so many rules? It can be the mannerisms, can be the rules of mannerisms, you know, on sometimes more of a, I don't know, family household focal point, but we can go out from there. And a good way to kind of tune into Cancer Capricorn is looking at particular levels from the micro to the meta, like, you know, so if it is house, then how does your house Cancer fit within neighborhood Capricorn? If it's neighborhood Cancer, how does that fit within the town Capricorn? If it's your town Capricorn, how does that fit within the city, or town Cancer, the city Capricorn, the city, you know, Cancer within the state Capricorn, this or the county within the state within the union, like that kind of example, right? And when we look at these oppositions, sometimes, I mean, we can take it even more personally. That was really strongly configured in the new moon, of which this full moon, well, I mean, we could say in a sense belongs, which is that in this Cancer new moon, I just want to cast a more global chart. We had a really strong square to Jupiter in Aries, and I spoke about that at length, and this idea of like individuating, and the tension of that individuation from that place that raised us, but also staying true to it and bringing the elixir from the special world in our own journey back home. So I spoke a bunch about, outcasts, also like the prodigal one images there. It's always interesting in a lunation to look at how far planets have moved between the time of the new moon and the full moon, right? So Venus, who was at 7 Gemini at Cancer new moon time, has now made it to 25 Gemini. Mercury has completely changed signs. Mercury very quick much of the time, Obviously the moon has made it more than halfway around the zodiac, because in these 14 and a half-ish days between new and full moon, the sun moves by so many degrees, so the moon has to move 180 plus that, What other things have happened, like Mars leaving home from Aries into Taurus? How does that add to this mix? And on one level, I wish I had time to speak to it all. On another, I think it's nice to sometimes convey the principal themes and to attempt to be quick. So I want to say this about these moon alignments to these outer planets. There's something that's like well beyond self or nuclear family or home, and looking into how actually do those relate to the rules of a larger whole, right? So is it clan and tribe? Do those words work in that way? Again, like house and neighborhood, neighborhood and town and city and county and state and union, union world, those kinds of themes. And so we're likely to see kind of strong political activations of personal opportunities for growth coded in this particular Capricorn full moon. And one of the answers is to tune into the ancient ways. I always hear that word in Capricorn. I see that in a sense also in the rings of Saturn. And while Venus is in a place that in Gemini is blind to the mystic rectangle of these signs, she is aspecting in a very strong aspect this square with Neptune, who can see them all. Neptune in Pisces has sextiles to the earth signs of Capricorn and Taurus, and has trines to the similar element signs of Scorpio, South Node, and Cancer Sun. Venus in that really strong applying square to Neptune reminds us to tune into the ideal of truth, and that we can honor each other's sides of the stories to hear more of the tale. And she also reminds us to dream. And she also says, I'm kind of in a confused state. So some of the confusions of the heart, especially when the heart is dancing through the weird world of the mind. Venus, with her strong trine to Saturn, is carrying this knowledge of the ages. And how can we make a better way for community, and how, while Neptune might argue for freedom and like a looseness in that regard, Saturn says, no, have rules, like let them be innovative and let them change, but maybe going back, that's the retrograde in Saturn in general, to like an older way of foundations will help you move forward, so that this opposition doesn't pull you apart, but rather puts you together as a new whole. Mars in Taurus, there's something inherently true when a planet is opposite the sign that it's said to call home. For Mars, one of those places is Scorpio, so Mars in Taurus is said to be, a stranger in a very strange land. There's something inherent in there, which is just counterculture, and we can say that very importantly of Moon, when in the sign of Capricorn, away from home. That means I have 2 minutes before a student, so I'm going to be quick here. And I'm almost ready to wrap up, but I want to share some other things about the particular, astronomical powers of the moon at this time. So one is these connections to these outer planets. One is this truth that from an essential dignity point of view, Moon is in the sign opposite from her home, right? And that's what they call detriment these days. But the Moon is in mutual reception with sun by face. That's the decans. The moon is said to rule this last 10 degrees of Cancer, and the sun the last 10 degrees of Capricorn. The moon is in a mutual reception by exaltation. Well, let me say that the moon's so-called lord of exaltation is Mars, who here in the sign of Taurus is in the moon's exalted sign. So they have an exchange in that regard. And so you'll see on the medieval scorecard that the score gets balanced, yeah? So we want to not stop at the level of, rulership. There's something important here where Capricorn and Aquarius are said to be blind to one another, so the moon cannot necessarily see the teacher of this culture called Capricorn, which is Saturn. However, there's kind of a psychic connection between those signs. They're said to be like and girding, associated through the Saturnian connection. And I think that word psychic, it's hard to find the right way to express the necessity and the power of tuning into the invisible, letting dream language lead the way, letting the watery voice of the heart speak in its own songs. And I see that in this mystic rectangle. I see that in this Venus-Neptune square. I see that in this Moon-Saturn, semi-sextile or inconjunct. I see that in the moon's trine with Uranus, sextile with Neptune, coming conjunction with Pluto. Things want to change, and they're long-standing, and it's difficult to understand exactly. A lot of it's going to feel outside of us, but that outside of us is here to stimulate the inside. And it's going to take courage to choose to release our grip on the rocky land we've always known, so that we can float a bit into the sea and reflect back from that place what the very purpose of land and solid ground beneath our feet is. Now, when moon is opposite Lilith like this is the true black moon. This means moon is closest to the earth, biggest, brightest, fastest. This is a very fast Capricorn moon. Moon moves on average 13 1/3 degrees per day. Now 15 1/3 degrees per day. It's a very fast moon, and it's a big moon. Moon is very close to Earth. Cloudy recently here in the Bay, so I haven't been able to see huge moon. But if the clouds clear tonight when moon rises at sunset, and if I can continue to see over here where I can look to the southwest when the moon sets at sunrise, I will see the moon setting significantly out of bounds. So this is the last thing I don't have time to share with you. And just look at this circle of the moon. You can see that it is well south of the Tropic of Capricorn. Mercury seems to be maybe north of the Tropic of Cancer. In the moon, I can see this in declination, more than 23.5 degrees. That's the tropic. Let's test Mercury. Mercury just passed the tropic, which is actually 23 degrees, 26 minutes, and 15 seconds. So Mercury and moon both out of bounds, like literally having gone beyond the limits of the sun. Those are the tropics, tropicos. The turnarounds encourage us to, again, release this kind of code that we've been taught is the one and only way, and understand that when we allow ourselves to release that old land, though it will take us into the strange mysteries of the sea where we might feel like we will never find solid ground beneath our feet again, we are asked to release so that we may be returned to a stronger